April 15th, when Trump's, court case really started, up until now, he hosted 28 rallies. In the same time period, he has hosted 3 this year. And so it's really evident that the court is restricting Trump from rallying.
I think there's a chance that he gets acquitted only because of how much of a train wreck this thing has been from start to finish. When Stormy Daniels is the strongest witness, and this is a woman who's changed her story so many times, and she looks so much better than Michael Cohen, who's the star witness. It's just from top to bottom. There's a reason nobody would touch this for so long, except for Alvin Bragg. And I think he's probably regretting it.
And you bring up a good point, Grace. I mean, they make her look great, and she spent her whole life in career faking things. So this is a situation where I hope these people in Manhattan have a backbone. If it ever gets out that those people let Trump off the hook, life will never be the same for them ever again.
All right, folks, check this out. Here's what's going on. Trump's trials are wrapping up. How's that going to play out? We're going to break it down with the panel. Plus, all the talk about Biden's campaign raising all of this money. Guess what? Trump and the RNC crushed them in the latest fundraising numbers. We're going to talk about what that means. Plus, the House today is voting to ensure that illegals can't vote in our elections, and the media and the Democrats are up in arms. Why? What's really at stake? A lot to break down. A great panel with you right now. Reagan Reese from the Daily Caller, the White House correspondent, she's here with us, and a new story on the Trump rallies. Chad Prather, the host of the Chad Prather Show. He's a comedian, a musician. He does it all. And then Grace Curley, the host of the Grace Curley Show on WKRKO 680 up there in Boston. She is also a columnist for the Boston Herald and a contributor for the Spectrum. We're going to break it all down with them. But I want to tell you first about my friend Leo Grillo. He's not on the panel, but he's done amazing work rescuing dogs, cats, animals, all sorts of animals in need by creating an organization called Delta Rescue. Delta Rescue is a no-kill sanctuary, not a shelter, not a place that they go waiting to get adopted or taken home. No, this is a no-kill sanctuary for life. He provides them with the veterinarian care that they need, the nutritional care that they need, all the support, and it's a place to run free. Check it out. Go to deltarescue.org, look at the videos and see what I'm talking about, because sometimes it's hard to visualize this, but the second best thing is that it's a completely mission that Leo has built on his own, and he relies completely on donations from all of us. If you're an animal lover, you rescue animals, I've had 3 dogs in my life, then please think about helping out Leo. Go to deltarescue.org, make a contribution. But while you're there, check out the estate planning kit, because the only way that this mission endures is that if we can actually make it part of our legacies and figure out a way to keep this thing going for decades and decades. Please go to deltarescue.org, see the great work that they're doing, think about a contribution, and then download the estate planning kit. Thank you. Now, let's get into it with the panel. Chad, Grace, and Reagan. All right, gang, good to see you all. I want to get to the Trump trial and get your take on a couple things. But before we do that, today the House is voting on this voting bill. They will, one, stop the folks from D.C. from allowing them to vote in local elections, and 2, have a broader election integrity bill preventing illegals from. But what I thought was interesting, and this is kind of what I want to start with, Grace, is this is the political playbook take, right? They said, of course, some Republicans, including Johnson himself, obviously Speaker Mike Johnson, have gone further. The speaker, during his presser with Trump, echoed rhetoric popular with the MAGA right, suggesting without evidence. That's the line. I love it. You can't say anything today. They ordered dinner without evidence that Biden is allowing undocumented immigrants into the country with the total goal of helping Democrats win election. Okay, actually, I think we did provide evidence, but Republicans are also conflating local efforts. We're conflating local officials' efforts to allow non-citizens to vote in local offices, such as the D.C. law targeted on today's floor vote on the House, with the notion that Democrats want a flood of immigrants to vote in federal elections like Congress for president. This is the problem, as far as I'm concerned, is that the Democrats and the media are in cahoots to sort of say there is nothing to see here.
Yeah, and this idea that if you just use common sense and you can understand that there's an issue with all of this, that somehow that means you're part of the MAGA far right and you're like an agitator who's trying to storm the Capitol. I think that it is definitely a part of the narrative. And also something that's very frustrating, I think, for regular Americans is that, let's just say hypothetically, for example, in 2020, there was nothing wrong. The election was on the level. Let's just use that hypothetical. There still shouldn't be a problem with implementing very basic ways for people to feel that the election has integrity. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to make, because I remember seeing a poll that said like 60% of Republicans, and I'm sorry, I can't think of the specific poll, because 60% of Republicans feel unsure about the elections. That's an issue for the entire country. I don't care if it's, if you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, you should want people to feel good when they cast their vote and feel as though it's being counted and everything's on the level. And it's not hard to do. That's the part of this. Think about all the money we spend. Think about all the things we do in this country. This should be the number one thing, is just figure this out, make people feel that it is secure, and the problem is eliminated.
The thing that you're touching on is a piece of messaging that I think needs to be incorporated in everything. There's this assumption on the left that until you have a ton of fraud, you shouldn't do anything to prevent it. The point that I tell everyone every night is, do you lock your door? And they'll say, well, yeah. I go, how many times have you been broken into? How many times has your house been broken into? Well, none. Well, then why do you lock your door? Well, because I want to take appropriate measures to protect what I care about, my family, my possessions, whatever. The same reason that every bank has a vault. It's not because it was broken into previously. It's because it wants to protect what it considers valuable. If we consider the right to vote something of value, then we should protect it. What's the harm in ensuring and doubling down on this? Chad, the thing that I tweeted out this morning, and I have to admit I stole it from someone somewhere, but I don't know whom. So asterisks, I don't want to commit a Biden and just steal it and then not give credit. But here's the philosophy of the left. There's no evidence, so therefore we can't do it. Okay, so let me get this straight. You come into this country illegally, we give you a license. We don't allow people to ask if you're a citizen, so we can't find out if you voted illegally, but then there's no evidence. It's like a catch-22. But here's the bigger premise that I want to get to. You break the law by coming into this country. But then the Democrats are saying, but they would never break another law by voting illegally. Who would do that? Only someone who's breaking the law would do that. And I'm like, they just broke one law. Why is the next law somehow some bar that's too far?
Yeah, you take the words right out of my mouth on that, Sean, because you're exactly right. If they've already committed an illegal act by coming into the country the way that they have, obviously, if we make it easy for them to participate in our elections, they'll do that as well, especially if it serves their best interest. What we've done in this country and continue to do, which is appalling, is that we continue to lessen consequences for crime, whether it's a smash and grab or it's not a crime if you steal something under $750 in value. Everything is a slap on the wrist. That we do have evidence of. The left and their policies are consistently letting people get away with things. So I like the fact that we should be doing everything we can to secure the privilege of voting in this country and making sure that it's beyond the shadow of a doubt. We have a confidence in that institution. That's gone, and it's gone on the left too. Because if Trump wins in November, when Trump wins in November, the first thing you're going to hear is election fraud, because Hillary Clinton did the exact same thing. So it happens on both sides. And, listen, our founding fathers, for you to vote in this country, our founding fathers set it up so you had to be the head of a household, you had to be a man, you had to be a property owner. We've done all these things to diminish the requirements for voting.
I'm so glad you just touched on this, because what happens on the right every time you think about trans issues, for the longest time, we said, there's no way. You're never going to be able to be a boy and play in girls' sports. And what you're touching on, Chad, is so important for people to understand, because it's a slippery slope, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to let you vote. First, we changed all this, and I get it, right? So how the standard keeps changing. And now what's the standard? Well, you can vote in local elections. And trust me when I tell you, folks, mark this episode, put it down. We play the tape. In 5 years, it's going to be considered racist, xenophobic, whatever you want to say, to not allow anyone that's in the country to vote because we all have equity in the country or something ridiculous like that. This is the moment that if we don't stand, the idea that we're allowing people to vote in local elections, this is the camel under the tent. Camel's nose under the tent. This is it. And I just don't think that we appreciate the historical context that you're giving us, because it keeps going and it keeps going. And suddenly it's going to be considered completely racist if we don't do this. Reagan, the thing, I think you're the journalist on the panel. The media, if you don't look for it, you'll never find it, right? And this is the thing, is that they go, well, it doesn't exist. And yet, the reason I want to ask you about this is because in so many instances, they'll say, well, they'll jump to a conclusion. Well, we saw this, therefore it must be myth. But in this one case, how dare we possibly think that allowing somebody to come into this country illegally, not punishing them, but actually rewarding them, giving them a driver's license, allowing them to vote in local elections. How possibly could we be dumb enough to think, my gosh, the next step is to allow them to vote everywhere? In this one instance, the idea of allowing that train of logical thought to continue makes no sense to them. But in any other circumstance, they'd say what the right is doing is clearly attempting to do X. It's just this one case where the media thinks it's so outrageous that anybody could possibly think that.
Yeah, I think Politico Playbook put on a clinic this morning, showing how to, put on and push a narrative. It was, look over here. There's no evidence of non-citizens voting in federal elections, completely trying to distract you from the fact that non-citizens can vote in DC local elections. So yeah, okay, these non-citizens might not be voting for who's going to be the next president of the United States or the next senator or representative, but they're voting for who's going to be mayor and city council. And those things still matter to Americans just because it's not a federal election.
But it's also, but just to be clear, number one, the only reason that they're dealing with DC is because they actually have jurisdiction over it. They're not dealing with Maryland and all these other jurisdictions because Congress doesn't have authority over how the local voting regulations. It does for DC, which is why they're dealing with it. But the other point is, if you get a driver's license and vote in DC and then you move to Maryland or you move to California, the idea that you're not going to vote after you've been told to vote and told, by the way, that if you don't vote, by the way, there's consequences, democracy's at stake, these big bad Republicans will throw you out of the country. Why wouldn't you vote? You've been told it's critical to to your existence, frankly. If you don't vote, my gosh, hint, hint, wink, nod, you're going to get deported from this country when Trump and the Republicans take control. Why wouldn't you vote? I mean, to me, it's like you're going to get screwed either way. You might as well vote, right? I mean, that to me is the message the Democrats are sending.
I think you're so right in saying that it's a slippery slope, too, in looking at this local election. And I think I've reported before that Republicans struggle on their messaging in terms of the election integrity front. So when I see this bill and then I see what Politico Playbook writes this morning, if I'm Mike Johnson, if I'm the Speaker of the House, I'm like, okay, we really need to step up our messaging game on this. Yeah. And we need to really hammer this. Look at what's happening in DC. This could happen to you across the country if it's not already happening. This is what we're doing for you. We're doing something in Washington. I think a lot of Americans have been so frustrated with Congress, and this is a great opportunity for Mike Johnson.
Look, great opportunity. But to your point about the messaging, these guys constantly, until this morning, there was no buildup. You can't just throw something on the floor and expect people to pay attention to it. They literally, on immigration and border security, on all these issues, it's one and done. They pop it up, they vote, and they walk out. Like, how did you guys not pay attention to this despite your busy lives? And this is the problem. I think Republicans' messaging sucks, and they have not understood how to build up and sell a message. You cannot expect everybody to wake up today and say, okay, let's talk about voter integrity because we're going to vote on a bill in 10 minutes. That's not how it works. I'll tell you, by the way, Team Biden cannot be happy with those fundraising numbers. They probably make them sick to their stomach, but it may be more than that. They may have gut issues. And if you saw the episode we just did with Tina from Just Thrive, then you know that 70 to 80% of Americans suffer from some kind of gut issues. And it's not just your immune system. It's your mood as well. So Team Biden, this may be exactly what you need. Here's the thing, though. 99% of probiotics on the market don't actually get through your stomach to where they need to help. And think about all of the things that a probiotic does. And this is what I was talking with Tina on the show about. You're talking about your immune system, healthy weight management, skin, your mood, as I said, so many things dependent on your gut health, which is why the folks at Just Thrive have come out with such a great product, because it's got more clinical research than anything else that's on the market. It provides all of the support to boost your energy and to help your immune system get that gut healthy. And for a limited time only, you can get either the Just Calm, which I think I need, as well as the probiotic, 20% off a 90-day supply of either if you go to justthrivehealth.com, justthrivehealth.com, use promo code SPICER, 20% off. I'm using both. I'm using the Just Thrive probiotic and the Just Calm. You can get either one, 20% off, justthrivehealth.com, promo code SPICER. I want to switch gears because we've got a lot to break down on the Trump/campaign front. Grace, the narrative, speaking of narratives, Biden was dominating Trump. He was going to have much more money. The Trump campaign screwed. Then the numbers come out. 76 million between Trump and the RNC, 53 million. Now, I didn't take math in college. I got out of it by taking a course called Logic. So I'm not very good, but I do believe that 53 million, which is what the Biden DNC team raised, is slightly less than 76 million, which is what Trump. And the funny part about it was, the narrative today isn't, wow, Trump actually kicking butt and doing well. It's, how did the Biden guys not crush him, right? What are we doing to retool this? Because the media is like, we didn't see this coming. There's no way it could happen. And so all of the narrative in the media is, how is Biden repairing this damage? What has he got in the schedule? And, how many events? It's literally like they're freaking out and they're concerned. Now, I will just say this. I think there's going to be so much money that it's not going to matter on the margins, number one. Number two, both of these guys are 100% known. So it's not like someone's like, who's Joe Biden? Tell me a little bit about him. And this fella Trump, what's he like? Everybody knows them. So, but I do think it's funny, again, from a media narrative, Trump just crushing them while he's in court.
Yeah. And something else I've noticed kind of on the same lines is, that Trump's winning when the narrative is, oh, why didn't Biden do better? Like, what kind of went wrong with messaging? In the same way that when you read the polls, and I bet you notice this, Sean, the polls now where Biden's getting just no Americans have confidence in Biden. They're not liking him. It's switched up. So now it's not Trump's crushing Biden in the polls. Now it's Americans aren't really crazy about either candidates. It's like they can't just say that Biden is plummeting in the polls. So they have to say there's an apathy there. No one really seems to like either candidates. But I think the fundraising, I do think a lot of it has to do with this trial and the fact that it is backfiring in a big way on Democrats. And I think part of it is because, at least from my perspective, I was very used to seeing Trump at these giant rallies. And when you get used to something and you get comfortable with it and you see it all the time, you're not as wowed by it. Like if you're in person at those rallies, you're wowed by it because there's so many people. But you see it on TV, he's in a red state, he's got a lot of, you go, yeah, that's what he does. But to see him in New York and to see him at a construction site in Manhattan or at a bodega in Harlem, there's a
today in the Bronx.
Energy. Today in the Bronx, it's like, you look at it and you kind of go, he still got it. Like he's still that New Yorker. And so I don't know why, but I think that Americans are seeing this narrative of Trump being trapped in this courtroom and being forced to only campaign in that surrounding area. And it's making him actually look better. And it's making people kind of energized in a different way than they had been before.
Chad, no question Trump was helped in the primary by the attacks. But I feel like I watched someone frame this the other day that's not a huge Trump supporter. And I had to scratch my head and say, okay, let me just actually think about this. When Trump was tweeting for a while, right, everyone said, oh, I love Trump's policies. But I shouldn't say everyone. A lot of people in the sort of the moderate, more wing of the establishment Republican Party would say, I love the policies. I don't like the tweets. Then he got banned from tweeting and they went on Truth Social. On the campaign trail, right now, he's trapped in court 4 days a week. And what's being covered is, I think, a lot of the lawlessness and, frankly, more of the Biden policy, like inflation and the economy and the border, because they can't, he's not out there at the rallies. I wonder, and this is the argument that this person made, it's like, it's almost to Trump's benefit because he can't get in his own way, is what they were trying to say, is that he can't do this. And therefore, you have to kind of look at reality. The media have to cover the economy and the border and all these things that aren't good for Biden. And by Trump sort of having a straitjacket on him, they were arguing that it helps him. Agree or disagree?
I agree wholeheartely. I said it recently on my show as little as 2 weeks ago.
Maybe it was you then.
It could have been me because I made a point of it a couple of times to say, it's it's kind of nice to kind of have Trump get out of his own way. He's not being bombastic in the way that he was so consistently before. Let me give you an example from here in Texas. So not long ago, they had that huge impeachment sham trial against our friend Ken Paxton, the attorney general here. And I was talking to Ken and I said, what damage did that do as we entered into the primary elections here in Texas? He said, it's the best possible thing that could have happened because that trial was free publicity that exposed a lot of things that were going on that the average grassroots voter didn't realize was happening in the Texas Republican House. So I think a lot of that lawfare is backfiring in the case of Trump as well. Trump's getting free publicity. There's a lot of people who can relate to Trump because he's being falsely accused in many ways. The trials are falling apart. Scandalous people are the ones bringing the accusations and actually bringing the trials, leading the trials. So I think it's playing in his advantage. A lot of people are seeing this guy as a persecuted martyr. And the fact that Trump can't say sometimes some pretty, well, we'll say mean things, but quite honestly, he's also said some dumb things from time to time. If you don't understand his sense of humor, it's going to come across as very bombastic. And I think it's been a good thing for him.
I can't help it because I think what happens is if the media can't focus on the one little, to your point, like attack that he made on someone or remark that he made, and they actually have to be like, okay, I have to fill airtime today, then they almost have to cover like the government reports that show how bad everything is. Mm-hmm. And I think that benefits them. That's to your point. Like
Sean, I mean, who wants to raise money or vote or support a guy like Joe Biden who's got this imaginary cast of characters in his brain like Uncle Bosie and the Cannibals and Riley Last Name and Corn Pop? I mean, it's entertaining at best. It's sad and tragic at worst when you consider what it's doing to the country. But this guy's not, as the point that was already made, the guy's not rallying any troops. I mean, I don't care how many times he comes out of the floor with Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. You can only do that once or twice, man. Nobody's impressed by that. What's happening with Trump is going to work in his advantage 100%.
Reagan, you actually have a really fascinating analysis that you posted in the Daily Caller, a story that you wrote this week, talking about how many rallies Trump had done in 2016, 2020, and then now, based on the conversation that we're having, is it that you're feeling in your analysis that it's benefiting or hurting? Because you point out, and I thought this was interesting, in the story that we were in a very different phase back then. In 2016, he was still fending off primary candidates. I think Mark, I'll let you kind of give us the context. But I thought what your story highlighted is that it's not apples and apples. He was still trying to win a primary back then at this time. And that's a little different than where he was, say, now, where he has no primary opponents and he's just doing this. But also, are they as necessary? People know him more. He has plenty of money to get his name out.
Yeah, well, to the point that the Biden campaign wants Trump out there. And I don't think that they want the court to restrict him as much as they'll argue, that the court doesn't restrict Trump and he should be out there. We've seen the Biden campaign petition to the media and say, you should be covering Trump more. Please stop, focusing on us, which we at the Daily Caller will not be listening to any of those demands. But yeah, my report was, we've seen Trump say, this is election interference, this court. I can't rally. I only have Wednesdays that are free. I'm in court for 8 hours a day, 4 times of the week. They were almost going to keep him from his son's graduation. So, I wanted to quantify that and say, okay, is this really keeping Trump from rallying? In 2016, through this same time period, so April 15th, when Trump's, court case really started, up until now, he hosted 28 rallies. In the same time period, he has hosted 3 this year. And so it's really evident that the court is restricting Trump from rallying. Whether that helps him or doesn't help him, whether he needs to do it or not, I think.
But you know what's interesting, Reagan? Let me, and this is popping into my head as we say this. When he does a rally, it's covered by Right Side Broadcasting. Newsmax may pick up one or two, et cetera, right? When he comes out of the courtroom and says, blah, 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 everybody covers it. He actually probably gets more press coverage when he comes out and addresses the media at court than he does at a rally because, you know, NBC News and the Washington Post aren't going to cover the rally, in terms of the news. So I actually think he probably gets more media doing the court than he does going to a rally because of who covers it.
He admitted that when he was at the bodega or when he was at one of his trips. You know, he went to the firehouse in New York and he's talking about court. And he said, yeah, the media is probably going to cover me now here than they were at a rally. And I think you're probably right in the fact that he's getting so much earned media from the fact that he is in court. MRC had a report on this. I think it was like 573 minutes that CBS, NBC, and ABC have spent talking about Trump in his trial. And so he might not need those rallies. But I do think our analysis serves the purpose of showing that, yes, the court is restricting Trump. As much as the left-wing media and the Biden campaign want to say, no, Trump is free to do whatever he wants. Ours is to show that, no, this court is, kind of putting the handcuffs on Trump in some way, regardless of how it benefits him.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that what he can and cannot do. I just wonder how much he actually is saying, hey, I'm getting more out of this. Sorry to interrupt the conversation, but I know as we get older, we have a little bit less energy, don't we? We all know what that feels like. I definitely don't feel like the guy I was 10 years ago. But one of the things that can really help is what the folks at Nugenix Total T have put together. They have created a proprietary formula with Tesnor in it that is going to help get that energy back that you're lacking right now. And if you text 231-231, enter keyword Spicer, you're going to get a complimentary bottle. And guess what? Under the Biden economy, with all the inflation, that's the best deal that you're going to get. But I got more for you. If you text Spicer to 231-231 right now, you're actually going to get a second bottle with that order. Thermo X. It's a fat burning incinerator they've just come out with now. And here's the cool thing about the folks at Nugenix Total T. It's all clinical grade. We're not talking any generic products or ingredients. This is all clinical grade. It is the #1 selling testosterone boosting product at both GNC and Walmart. And you're getting it for free by texting Spicer to 231-231. You're getting the bottle of Nugenix Total T with Tesnor in it, plus the bottle of Thermo X fat incineration. That's the best deal you're going to get this Memorial Day weekend. I'm telling you, in the Biden economy, you can't ask for more. So go text Spicer to 231-231. Remember that texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply. Now back to the conversation. Let's kind of segue to the Trump trial for a second. I just want to go around the horn. I don't think this is a good week for the prosecution. I think Michael Cohen looked like the Goomba that he is. He admitted that he stole money. He had to look like an idiot because he said that Costello wasn't his attorney, and then they bring forward this email that says, "Welcome to the team, buddy." And I'm like, if that's your star witness, plus the fact that they haven't really talked about what this other crime is that makes it a felony. There's really they proved that Michael Cohen made these documents, but there's nothing yet that I see that says, okay, Trump, here's the paper where Trump said, file this as a legal document, which is what the underlying crime is, the misdemeanor. But Grace, if this was anywhere else, if this was, I actually maybe even up with you guys in Boston, if it was in Texas where Chad is, it's a no-brainer. But I don't think if this was anywhere else, we'd be having this conversation. That being said, considering the Manhattan jury, next week, whatever it is, Monday, I guess Tuesday or something like that, it starts to go, they'll make closing arguments and then it'll go to the jury. Do you think that he actually gets convicted, yes or no, and why?
So I don't. And I should preface it by saying oftentimes I'm too optimistic and I have too much faith in people. But I always have faith in jurors and I always have faith in New Yorkers to be able to see through BS. I understand their politics. I understand it's sapphire blue. I get that. But I do think that we forget that there's something about New York where people are able to kind of look at something and go, this isn't really adding up. And I think that Michael Cohen, the ironic part, which you just alluded to about Alvin Bragg not finding a crime here. And there was kind of this talk of, he almost seems like he wants to go along with the trial and hope to find one along the way. And the irony that he did find one, but it wasn't Donald Trump's, it was Michael Cohen's. This was such a disaster.
That's so funny. He's like in the middle of the trial. He's like, we're actually going to go refile these charges against Michael Cohen for lying more.
Yeah, we found it. Eureka. But it's crazy because you have Anderson Cooper on CNN. He was detailing that testimony of Michael Cohen, and he was saying how Trump's lawyers just destroyed him. And he said, if I were on the jury, I would be really questioning whether or not I would believe this guy. And so I do think that Trump, I think there's a chance, he just needs one person to not have a decision. But I think there's a chance that he gets acquitted only because of how much of a train wreck this thing has been from start to finish. I mean, when Stormy Daniels is the strongest witness, and this is a woman who's changed her story so many times, and she looks so much better than Michael Cohen, who's the star witness. It's just from top to bottom. There's a reason nobody would touch this for so long, except for Alvin Bragg. And I think he's probably regretting it. And I don't think they're going to convict Trump. That's just my feeling.
Chad, I always say I'm not a lawyer, but I just want to remind, but what I understand is that these jury instructions are going to be critical. If the judge says to them, you can't consider this, you can't consider this, this is the threshold crime. That to me is going to be, because at some point the jury has to be able to say, guys, I agree with this, but the judge said we can't, agree with this, this, and this. Do you think that, considering the New York I mean, if it wasn't in Manhattan, I mean, heck, if it was in Queens or anywhere else, I'd probably say he's definitely off. But I'm just so concerned that the peer pressure, and we saw this during jury selection, where people said, I've been outed and my work is already saying this and that. Mm-hmm. I worry that if you're sitting in that courtroom, that the wokes, the handful of people are going to say, if you don't vote to convict, your name is going to be mud and everyone in your neighborhood is going to go after you. And I think they're right. I think if it wasn't for a Manhattan jury, this would be a no-brainer. But I got to believe, I've said this previously, it can't be one person. There's no way one person can't hold out. They're too weak. I think it needs to be like three people who say, they lock arms and say, brother, sister, if you're with me, I will say that we all agreed. But it has to, if they walk out of that courtroom and they can all point their finger at one person and said, we all voted to make it, to convict him. But it was Grace Curley, man. You should talk to her or she wouldn't cave and da-da-da. Grace, I mean, like, one person can't do that. I'm sorry. New Yorkers might be tough, but that peer pressure, knowing that your family's going to get attacked. So anyway, that's how I come down on this. Chad, what do you think?
Listen, you don't want to be that one jury member that said OJ was guilty, right?
Yeah.
So this is a situation where you do hope some people have a backbone, but you're right. I mean, the pressure of being doxxed. Listen, there's people that were in the Trump administration, worked for the Trump administration, that have been asked now, do you want to go back into the Trump administration if he gets reelected? And they're like, I can't risk losing everything I've got. This is such a polarizing thing. I agree with Grace. I hope that he gets acquitted in this deal. Listen, I think the prosecution at this point would like to pay Michael Cohen hush money. I mean, he's talked so much to the point where Stormy Daniels, and you bring up a good point, Grace. I mean, they make her look great, and she spent her whole life in career faking things. So, this is a situation where I hope these people in Manhattan have a backbone. But I tend to agree with you, Sean. If it ever gets out that those people let Trump off the hook, life will never be the same for them ever again.
Reagan, in your wheelhouse, just look at your magic ball. Trump gets let off. How does the mainstream media report this? Is it, I remember Trump held up that Washington Post paper after the House voted to let him off on it, or indict him and then exonerate him. And he held it up and he said, we should keep this to Melania there. How does the mainstream media cover him getting acquitted?
It's going to be a meltdown. Will there be tears? I'm not sure. I just don't see them. I think it's going to be, we're going to have our media clippers all over it, paying attention to it. I really am excited, I think, to see how the media reacts. I think this would be another, win for Trump. We've already seen the case in Georgia with Fani Willis kind of go down the drain. The classified docs case is now delayed indefinitely. And there's all of that with all of the FBI bringing props to the crime scene and raiding with force. And there's all of this drama around that case that only benefits Trump, that I think it's going to really puncture the media if, Trump comes off clean in Manhattan, that, wow, okay, now 3 times we're unable to get this guy, really. And it's just going to, make President Trump stronger and cause MSNBC to freak out even more.
I know. I'm actually excited. I really believe that 3 people will hold out. Let me kind of do a quick rapid fire with you guys. Trump has demanded a drug test before he debates with Joe Biden. The rules are being set in the first debate and then by CNN, the second one by ABC. There is no scenario in which either one of those outlets requires this. Zero, nada, not going to happen. And the thing that I want to ask you, Grace, and everybody, kind of just, I get why you did this, but you're not going to get it. And then from a negotiation standpoint, the media, again, is going to say Trump demanded this and didn't get it, and therefore it all benefits Biden, if you will. I just don't know that was the best thing to be saying, this is our one demand, drug testing. Grace?
I saw that and I didn't think it was a smart move, just because you're right, that's never going to happen. And then I don't know if Trump's going to feel compelled to say, well, if I don't get it, then I'm not going to debate, which I also don't think is a smart move, because then, the media narrative is going to be, he wimped out, he couldn't do it, he couldn't debate, Joe Biden, who's just too strong and was going to meet the moment and handle him with such, brilliant wit on the debate stage. So I don't think it was a smart move. But I also think he said it at like a GOP fundraiser thing. So, Sean, better than anyone, when Trump gets up there, he's going to, he's like a comic. Right. He's going to try to get the crowd going, and talking about Biden taking a drug test is definitely, a good little piece of content for him. So I don't know, maybe if Biden says no and then he just says that, whatever, I guess we'll have to go for it. But I didn't like it.
All right. So Chad, we've talked about things that he says. Mistake or smart messaging? Because look, I won't ask everyone, but I know I've been approached by a number of people who said, what was Biden on during State of the Union? And I'm like, look, so I get why Trump did it, but was it good messaging or strategic mistake?
Man, I haven't done drugs in a lot of years, but I would like to have one dose of whatever they're getting Joe hopped up on just for a minute. I want to try it just one time, dude. Ride that lightning. It's Trump being Trump. It's Trumpian, right? It's him being funny. He's getting some fanfare out of it. It's dumb. They're not going to enforce it, and he's not going to stand by it. I have other concerns about this thing. I'm concerned that they're doing it in June. That's very early for a debate. So who knows what's going to happen in regards to this? I have a lot of ideas, and most of them are scary, but I don't think this is one that's going to play into any factor.
So just to be clear, for the record, when you come back and look at the tape, do you think that if we come back on June, whatever that will be, can't remember
20,
which 20, yeah,
27th.
okay. I can't, then what, yeah, then September 10th. Okay. Do you think that this is going to be a mistake for Trump?
I think over dinner last night, I had a lot of conversations in regards to what this could look like. This could be a massive mistake for Biden. They could be setting Biden up for failure because they don't want him to be the candidate post after the DNC. So we'll see what happens. I don't think it plays well really for either candidate if you truly want to break it down in regards to that.
Reagan, let's just square this circle here. What do you think about the call for drug tests?
Mm-hmm. I think to Grace's point, I wouldn't have made this, my one thing that holds up the debate negotiation process. Yeah. So I think it's smarter of Trump to commit and just, get Joe Biden on the stage in June and September. But, if you really want to make this a thing, if I'm Trump, I take a drug test and I'm like, hey, Joe Biden, where are you? I can take the drug test and prove that I'm not on anything, because
it's almost like the birth certificate, right? He forced Obama. I mean, all right. I maybe they do that. All right. Last thing I want to get to before winners and losers real quick. Nikki Haley yesterday says she's voting for Trump. We don't have a ton of time, but Grace, just tell me, I mean, I think this was like, okay, here's the reality. I have to sort of quasi be on the Trump train if I want any political future. I know some people are even saying VP. I think both are pie in the sky by people on CNN that want to pretend that she's got a future.
I don't know. I saw that she was willing to vote for Trump, and I was thinking that that's angling to get a position, in his future administration.
Yeah, I keep saying this to people. She left as UN ambassador. If you can't handle being UN ambassador for more than a year and a half, how do you think you're going to be vice president? Chad, I mean, I don't get this.
No, and I don't care. I mean, Whoopi, I think she has no future whatsoever. I mean, she's one step short of shooting her dog. So, I mean, there's no future there.
Reagan?
I had the same reaction to this as I had to Mike Pence choosing not to endorse Trump. Okay, I'm not.
Well, the opposite. Yeah, but Mike Pence, I mean, he was basically saying, Mike Pence, I think, was saying, I need to be able to make more corporate speeches and be able to say I didn't endorse Trump, but I was his running mate. So now, big woke company can hire me to give $50,000 speech because they can tell their shareholders, oh, he didn't endorse Trump, but he's a Republican. So we can say we had somebody from the other side. Nikki Haley, I think this is all political.
I mean, okay, maybe I'll equivalate it to the news about RFK Jr. choosing his vice president. I kind of looked at it. I was like, okay, Nikki Haley's going to vote for Trump. And maybe I'm underestimating Nikki Haley, but I just felt like at some point she was going to have to say something. And I would have been shocked if it wasn't throwing her support behind Trump. Again, maybe I'm underestimating how much Nikki Haley doesn't like President Trump, but that's just how I read it.
So here's the thing. I think to Chad's point about debates, I think this was early. Like if you're going to do it, you could have waited to closer to the convention and said something. I really think that she is reading her own press and saying, wow, there's a shot I could be vice president. But I just, it would blow my mind. And I think several others, if that ever anyway, I would love to be a fly on the wall there because the calculus of this was fascinating. You did it at the Hudson Institute. You didn't give Trump a head. I mean, like you weren't even trying to get anything out of it. All right, let me go around the horn real quick. Grace, I'll start with you. Who did you think were this week's winners and losers?
Winners, I thought the Trump lawyers, Trump's team in the trial, big winners, as we said. And losers, I would say I would go the same way. Losers were Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, Alvin Bragg, everyone who has really put so much time, so much effort, so much money into trying to get Donald Trump. This is already the weakest of the cases. And I was stunned to see because even, I've been following Jonathan Turley and other people, and they said, as weak as we knew it was, we still thought maybe there would be something they'd come out with that they didn't show us before. And it was a whole bunch of nothing. And I think it's a big win for Donald Trump.
I do too. I think there's a reason that everyone else, the Biden DOJ, the FEC, everybody said no to this because this is all you have. Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen. Chad, who are your winners and losers for the week?
I like Harrison Butker. I think the guy kicked a field goal at Benedictine College, man. I think he really put something on the map that needs to be discussed, and we're still discussing it. A lot of people hated it. A lot of people want us to let it go, but it's given us a good opportunity. The loser, Michael Cohen. I mean, this guy's he's a ball of gas. Yeah. And thank God for him at this stage.
By the way, can I real quick on this, because I didn't have time to bring it up, but there was a headline since you brought up Harrison Butker that said Patrick Mahomes refuses to denounce him. Why did it refuse? Why can't he say, proud? Like, it's not, this isn't a Mahomes thing. I'm looking, the media was like, the default was you must denounce him. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation anyway, because I agree with you and I'm glad you brought him up. Reagan, what about you?
Winner, and I don't think this is partisan of me to say because I'm a Catholic myself, because my Harrison Butker jersey shipped and it's on its way to my house. Losers, I think, is the White House official transcript that had to correct Biden's speech 9 times. Instead of insurrectionists, he said erectionists. And so I think Joe Biden.
Is there a difference in your mind between the?
not in Joe Biden's mind.
Oh, all right. Who is your winner?
My winner? Oh, I said my winner was.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. All right. I actually, look, I don't mean to get cheesy, but I think as we head into Memorial Day weekend, I think the winner are the American people. We sit on a day like today, have the freedom to talk about whatever we want because people made a sacrifice. Similarly, I think the losers are potentially the American people. We are at a crossroads in this country and a choice where we have to sit here and question whether Harrison Butker should be denounced, whether or not men should be able to play in women's sports. We've got to start figuring out what we're for and what we're willing to stand up for and fight. There were people back in the day that lost their lives because they were willing to stand up for freedom that we all enjoy today. And I wonder what we're willing to do today to fight for our freedom. And to fight for the future of this country. So I hope people think about it as we head into this weekend. I always enjoy these shows. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you all for watching. Please continue to subscribe. YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, heck, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you back here tomorrow. We've got a great show headed your way with one of the key Senate candidates that could give us back the majority in the Senate. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.